Burt Lancaster was one of Hollywood's biggest stars, known for his strong masculine image and powerful screen presence. But according to some sources, behind his famous public persona lay secrets that he kept hidden throughout his entire career. This is the story of a man who lived two very different lives, one in the spotlight and another in the shadows. Born in 1913 in the tough Harlem neighborhood of New York City, Lancaster grew up in poverty. His family struggled to make ends meet, surrounded by the noise of trains and the harsh realities of urban life. Instead of giving up on his dreams, young Burt made a bold decision that would shape his future. He left home to join the circus, where life was hard and dangerous. People had to be tough to survive, training like soldiers and living like nomads moving from town to town. This difficult time in the circus gave Lancaster his impressive physical strength and the tough, determined personality that would later make him famous. His muscular build and intense eyes came from years of hard physical work and the discipline needed to survive in such a demanding environment. Little did he know that this unusual background would eventually lead him to Hollywood stardom. Lancaster's big break came in 1946 when he landed his first major role in the movie The Killers. Almost overnight, he became a sensation. Audiences loved his natural charisma and powerful presence on screen. From there, his career took off rapidly. He starred in many successful films, including the famous beach scene in From Here to Eternity, and later won an Oscar for his role in Elmer Gantry. Standing over 6 feet tall with movie star good looks, Lancaster perfectly represented the ideal American man of his era. He was everything Hollywood wanted in a leading man: strong, handsome, and confident. But according to some accounts, this public image was very different from his private reality. Some sources suggest that Lancaster struggled with aspects of his personal life that he felt he could never reveal to the world, especially given the social attitudes of his time. The entertainment industry in the 1940s and 1950s was very different from today. Actors were expected to maintain certain public images, and any behavior that didn't fit these expectations could destroy a career. According to various unverified sources, Lancaster may have had relationships that he felt compelled to keep secret, living in constant fear that the truth might come out and ruin everything he had worked for. One of the most significant relationships mentioned in these accounts was allegedly with Cary Grant, another major Hollywood star of the time. Grant was known as one of the most charming and handsome men in the film industry. According to some sources, Lancaster and Grant supposedly had a secret romantic relationship that lasted several years in the late 1940s and early 1950s. A butler who claimed to work at Grant's Santa Monica mansion reportedly said that Lancaster would stay overnight frequently during this period. These sources describe intimate moments between the two stars, swimming together in Grant's private pool at night, sharing drinks under the moonlight, and even allegedly getting matching small tattoos on their ankles as a symbol of their connection. However, this relationship supposedly ended painfully when Grant began publicly dating actress Betsy Drake, whom he later married. According to these accounts, Lancaster felt deeply betrayed when Grant chose to pursue a conventional marriage instead of continuing their relationship. The pain was reportedly so intense that Lancaster supposedly destroyed property in his dressing room when he heard about Grant's public announcement of his love for Drake. Even worse, Grant allegedly refused to work with Lancaster on future film projects, fearing that their on-screen chemistry might raise suspicions about their past relationship. After this supposed heartbreak, Lancaster allegedly found himself drawn to another major Hollywood star, Rock Hudson. Hudson was an incredibly handsome actor who stood 6 feet 6 inches tall and represented the perfect image of American masculinity in the 1950s. But like many stars of that era, Hudson reportedly struggled with keeping his true self hidden from the public. According to these unverified sources, Lancaster and Hudson met while filming in Rome and began spending time together away from the main hotel where the cast and crew were staying. They allegedly rented a private penthouse on the outskirts of the city where they could be themselves without worry about cameras or publicity. These accounts describe quiet dinners, French music, and intimate moments away from the pressures of their public lives. However, this relationship also supposedly ended badly. One story claims that Lancaster was found drunk and crying after Hudson left suddenly without explanation. Hudson was later photographed with a local model, which was reportedly a publicity stunt designed to quiet rumors about his personal life. Lancaster allegedly never spoke about what happened in Rome, but friends noticed a change in his behavior. He supposedly became angry and violent, punching a mirror in his dressing room and making cryptic comments about people who weren't brave enough to love openly. Perhaps the most surprising alleged relationship was with J. Edgar Hoover, the powerful director of the FBI. Hoover was one of the most feared and influential men in America for nearly 50 years. He had the power to destroy careers and ruin lives with the secret files he kept on countless celebrities and politicians. It seems unlikely that a free-spirited actor like Lancaster would connect with such a controlling and secretive man, but some sources claim they did have a relationship. According to T.'s accounts, Lancaster and Hoover met at a charity event in Washington, D.C. Hoover had long been rumored to be gay himself, though he never admitted it publicly. Some sources suggest he had a decades-long relationship with his close aide Clyde Tolson, but he kept this completely private. The alleged relationship between Lancaster and Hoover was described as less romantic and more based on understanding between two men who both had to hide parts of themselves, one yearning for freedom, the other trapped by his own power and position. They supposedly met several times for private dinners and had meaningful phone conversations. Lancaster allegedly once said that Hoover was both the strongest and loneliest man he had ever met. This relationship was described as being stifled by power and fear rather than being based on genuine emotion and connection. Another alleged relationship was with Ricky Nelson, the young singer and actor who starred in the popular TV show The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. Nelson was known for his innocent, clean-cut image and gentle personality. The sources claim that Lancaster and Nelson met in the early 1960s when Nelson was about 20 years old and Lancaster was approaching 50. Despite the significant age difference, these accounts suggest they formed a connection based on understanding and trust. Nelson was reportedly trying to break free from his wholesome public image and become his own person, while Lancaster had experience with the pressures of fame and could offer guidance. Lancaster supposedly saw himself as a mentor and protector, helping the younger man navigate the challenges of show business. This relationship allegedly lasted only a few months. Lancaster reportedly ended it not because he didn't care about Nelson, but because he felt the age difference was too great, and he didn't want to prevent Nelson from living his own life and making his own choices. They supposedly didn't see each other often after that, but Lancaster would still watch Nelson's television performances alone in his home. The most intense alleged relationship was supposedly with Marlon Brando, one of the most famous and rebellious actors of his generation. Brando was known for being unpredictable, passionate, and completely different from the typical Hollywood star. Where Lancaster was disciplined and controlled, Brando was wild and refused to follow rules both in his acting and his personal life. According to these sources, Lancaster and Brando met at a private Hollywood party in the late 1950s. While other guests engaged in typical party conversation, Brando stood alone, quietly observing everything around him. Lancaster was reportedly immediately intrigued by this mysterious and intense man who seemed so different from everyone else in the room. Their first conversation supposedly lasted until 3 in the morning, but they didn't talk about movies or careers. Instead, they discussed philosophy, psychology, politics, and the nature of love itself. They were attracted to each other not just physically, but intellectually through their shared ideas and worldviews. The alleged relationship that followed was described as passionate but tumultuous. They would meet secretly in beachside hotels and rented houses north of Santa Barbara, away from prying eyes. Sometimes Brando would show up at Lancaster's door at 2 in the morning just to lie beside him without speaking. Other times they wouldn't see each other for weeks, then suddenly come together as if drawn by magnetic force. Neither man would compromise or submit to the other. They allegedly argued like two directors competing for control, loved like artists pouring everything into their work, and connected like two souls who refused to belong to anyone. Brando supposedly called Lancaster a rock that knows pain, because he appeared tough on the outside but was full of emotional wounds inside. Lancaster allegedly called Brando a heart, less flame, because he burned intensely but always maintained an unreachable emotional distance. Their fights were reportedly epic, sometimes lasting until dawn, followed by passionate reconciliations and drives to Big Sur Beach. But both men had huge egos, deep emotional wounds, and heavy secrets that made a lasting relationship impossible. They loved each other with the most difficult parts of their personalities, which ultimately made their connection unsustainable. Brando allegedly began to change, disappearing without warning and drowning himself in alcohol, or acting as if their relationship had never existed. He would flirt with others when Lancaster was present, and when confronted would simply shrug and say, "You know who I am." Even strong Lancaster reportedly began to crumble emotionally from these mind games. One account claims that after a terrible argument in April 1960 at Lancaster's Los Angeles apartment, Brando stormed out and they never lived together again. However, they supposedly never completely left each other's hearts. Years later, when both men were old, Brando allegedly sent Lancaster a postcard with no words, just a picture of an empty beach. Lancaster understood this wasn't an apology or explanation, but simply a reminder of where they used to be happy together. Despite these alleged secret relationships, Lancaster did have public marriages and a family life that the world could see. His personal life was full of contradictions, maintaining a public image while supposedly hiding his true feelings and desires. His first marriage was to June Ernst, a woman he met during his circus days. She wasn't from the movie world, but understood the uncertain traveling lifestyle because she had lived it too. They married young, bonded by their shared experience of hardship and dreams. However, the difficult circus life, financial pressures, and changing ambitions caused their relationship to deteriorate. They divorced quietly, with some sources disagreeing on whether it happened in 1940 or 1946. Perhaps even Lancaster wanted to forget this chapter of his life. Lancaster's second and longest marriage was to Norma Anderson, whom he met during World War II when she was working as a volunteer performer, entertaining American soldiers in Europe. This chance meeting led to a relationship that lasted more than 20 years. They married in 1946 and had 5 children together: Bill, James, Susan, Joanna, and Sigel, known as Sheila. Bill Lancaster became a screenwriter for films like The Bad News Bears, while Joanna became a producer. Norma was much more than just a Hollywood wife staying in the background. She was a strong social activist who joined the League of Women Voters to promote voting education and was a passionate supporter of the civil rights movement. She and Lancaster organized fundraising events for Martin Luther King Jr. before his historic march in 1963. Their home in Bel Air, California, even had a print room where Norma worked day and night creating flyers about voting rights and racial justice. However, Lancaster's busy film career, constant travel, public attention, and the emotional wounds he reportedly carried from his secret relationships gradually damaged their marriage. They separated in 1966 and officially divorced in 1969, ending more than 2 decades together. Shortly after his divorce from Norma, Lancaster began a passionate but volatile relationship with Jackie Bone, a hairdresser who worked on the set of his film The Professionals. Jackie was completely different from any woman he had previously been with. Young, rebellious, independent, and totally unimpressed by Lancaster's fame or status. Their relationship was explosive and could quickly turn into a battlefield. One of the most famous incidents occurred at an elegant Hollywood party when Jackie supposedly smashed a wine bottle over Lancaster's head in front of shocked guests, including director Sidney Pollack and actor Peter Falk. Eventually, their fundamental differences ended the relationship. Jackie underwent a religious conversion and found faith, while Lancaster, with his free-spirited nature and personal beliefs, couldn't follow the same spiritual path. They parted bitterly, without promises or attempts to remain friends. The woman who stayed with Lancaster until the end of his life was Susan Martin, a private person who wasn't part of the entertainment industry. Susan was the only wife who accompanied him through the most difficult period of his old age. They married in 1990 when Lancaster was 75 years old. Susan wasn't attracted to his fame or celebrity status, but to his quiet, genuine personality beneath all the Hollywood glamour. She cared for him during his years of heart problems, stayed by his side through multiple hospitalizations, and always reminded him, "You have lived like a fire. Now let me be your home." They lived privately, away from reporters and cameras. There were no scandals or drama, just 2 people sharing memories and watching old movies together in the quiet of their home. Beyond his acting career and personal relationships, Lancaster was also known for his political activism and social conscience. He wasn't afraid to speak up when he saw injustice, even when silence might have been safer for his career. During the 1960s, when America was experiencing severe racial tensions, and the name Martin Luther King Jr. was still controversial in some conservative circles, Lancaster publicly supported him without hesitation. Along with his wife Norma, Lancaster organized fundraising events for Dr. King before the historic March on Washington in 1963. This was more than simple support. It was a statement that Hollywood could no longer stand aside while justice was denied to African Americans. Lancaster was also an active member of the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, participating in voter education campaigns and speaking out against racial injustice in American legal and social systems. Lancaster was also one of the first actors to publicly support workers' rights and fair treatment for everyone in the film industry. When major studios exploited technical staff and forced actors to sign unfair lifetime contracts, Lancaster didn't stay quiet to protect his next starring role. He used his influence to demand transparency, fair wages, and equal treatment for artists compared to powerful studio executives. He was also an outspoken critic of the conservative policies during the McCarthy era, a dark period when many artists were persecuted for suspected communist connections. While many stars kept quiet to preserve their careers, Lancaster was one of the few who dared to stand against the wave of fear and intimidation sweeping through Hollywood. After all the memorable film roles, the alleged hidden relationships, and the silent inner struggles, Lancaster's life eventually came to an end. He spent his final years living quietly with Susan Martin, who needed nothing more than his presence each morning when she woke up. Lancaster had already survived 2 heart attacks when, on October 20, 1994, at the age of 80, he died of a 3rd heart attack in his small apartment in Century City, Los Angeles. Following his wishes, there was no big funeral or crowds of mourners. His ashes were scattered under a large oak tree in Westwood Memorial Park, California. There was no elaborate headstone or impressive bronze statue, just a simple plaque reading, Burt Lancaster, 1913 to 1994. What Lancaster left behind wasn't just ashes or stone monuments, but a legacy that continues to influence actors and filmmakers today. He was more than just a movie star. He was a living example of what acting could be when it required authenticity, courage, and the willingness to explore the deepest parts of human nature. He portrayed men who were not only physically strong but also emotionally complex, full of inner conflicts, darkness, and the universal desire to be loved and understood. Lancaster's life story, whether the alleged secret relationships were true or not, represents the struggles many people faced during an era when social expectations were rigid and personal freedom was limited. He lived during a time when public figures had to carefully maintain certain images, regardless of their private truths or desires. His acting career spanned several decades and included some of cinema's most memorable performances. He brought a unique combination of physical strength and emotional vulnerability to his roles that resonated with audiences around the world. Whether playing a tough soldier, a conflicted businessman, or a passionate lover, Lancaster brought depth and authenticity that made his characters feel real and relatable. The stories about his personal life, whether factual or speculative, paint a picture of a man torn between public expectations and private desires, between the image Hollywood wanted him to project and the person he may have truly been inside. In an era when being different meant risking everything, Lancaster supposedly chose to keep his true self hidden while using his public platform to fight for justice and equality for others. His legacy extends beyond his filmography to include his social activism and willingness to use his fame to support important causes. At a time when many celebrities avoided controversial political positions, Lancaster stood up for civil rights, workers' rights, and artistic freedom. He demonstrated that fame could be used as a tool for positive change rather than just personal gain. Today, Lancaster is remembered not just for his iconic roles in films like From Here to Eternity, The Birdman of Alcatraz, and Atlantic City, but also as a complex human being who navigated the challenges of fame, personal identity, and social responsibility in mid-20th century America. His story, regardless of which details are true or speculative, serves as a reminder of how much society has changed and how much courage it took for people to live authentically during less accepting times. Whether the allegations about his private relationships are accurate or simply Hollywood gossip that has grown over the years, Burt Lancaster's public legacy as both an exceptional actor and a principled human being remains secure. He showed that it was possible to be both a major movie star and a person of conscience, using his platform to make the world a little more just and equal for everyone.